Ok, cool. Nickel. Bon, merci. Désolé pour l'attente. Je voulais que tout le monde puisse arriver au maximum. Il y en a encore qui arrivent un petit peu, mais on va commencer. And I will switch to English. Sorry for my accent. But I think you understood the talk will be in English because the Vestiaire Collective team is very international. So thanks for being here. Hi. Find a seat. Okay, cool. So most of you guys are members of the product crew, but some of you are not because we opened a little bit of seats for everyone who wants to join. So just to recap a little bit about the product crew, we are basically a community, and our vision is to bring together the best talents in tech, engineering, product, data, and design to basically upskill each other, share knowledge, share resources, meet through events like this. So we're very happy to have you all here. Our goal is basically to help everyone have a great career, find the jobs of your dreams, and just grow together. And today we are at Vestiaire Collective, and the wonderful team of Vestiaire co-prepared a Rex, basically, on the redesign and la refonte of your product page, which is basically one of the core elements of your business for an e-commerce. Sounds logical. So I'll leave the floor to them. We can all applaud them. Merci de les applaudir. So we have Sema, Adriana, and Tanmay, and Sephora. Thanks, Sephora, for the organization.
Thank you, everyone. So once again, welcome. We're super excited to have you here tonight. Actually, it's the first time that we work with the project crew, so it's even better for us. Like Matthias said, tonight we are going to take you on a journey on about like how we have redesigned fully our product page on our apps. So the goal here is to give you a rich overview of what it takes to build and ship a feature from A to Z at Vestiaire Collective. So we will make sure to be as honest as possible and share with you the wins, but also the challenges and the failures and everything that you all know about, I guess. And we also make sure to share as many tips and best practices as possible so that everybody can go out with ideas for their own projects. And I forgot the clicker. Perfect. So before getting started, I wanted to once again welcome the team. So like Matthias said, Adriana is our data project manager. She will give you an overview of like the story behind the project, why we did this, and also share the A/B testing strategy. Then there will be Sema also. She's our data product analyst. She's our tracking expert, and she's worked on a lot on this topic, so she will give you her tips on that. And we also have Tanmay over there. He's our engineering manager, and he has worked a lot with his team to build and develop the feature on our iOS and Android apps. And it's me, I'm Sephora, as you have probably guessed. I'm the tech communications manager, and basically I help the tech teams of Vestiaire Collective to like organize events, to share like their experience with cool communities like yours. So it's a pleasure. So let's get started. Maybe you already know Vestiaire Collective because you're a fellow user of the app, or maybe you've never heard of it before. So we are just going to take 5 minutes with Adriana to tell you what Vestiaire Collective is. And then I will leave her the mic to tell you how our teams, tech, data, and products are working together in our organization. Vestiaire Collective, in a nutshell, here it is. So we are a marketplace for second-hand fashion. We were created by two female co-founders in 2009. We have buyers and sellers interacting on our platforms daily, mainly in Europe, in APAC, and also in the US. We've grown a lot since 2009, and we really believe in our values, and we try to put them really at the center of everything we do. They're over there. So in that regard, we became a unicorn in 2021 and also got B Corp certified the same year, which means that we were like rewarded basically for our work in terms of diversity, inclusion, and sustainability, which are super important topics to us as well. About our teams, we are roughly 800 employees in 14 different locations. Our tech, product, and data teams all work from... Oh, no. Okay, that's good. I don't know why, but it didn't work at some point. We all work from 11 tech hubs, so from Paris, but also Tourcoing, Berlin, and other cities like these. And one last fun fact is that we have recently launched our first tech blog on Medium. It's called Vestiaire Collective, and this is where we share our expertise also, just like we are going to do tonight. So if you're interested, go check it out. And now I will leave the floor to Adriana.
Cool, thank you. Hello. Welcome everyone, super happy to welcome you to our home tonight. I'm just going to talk a bit about how we are distributed internally at Vestiaire, especially under the product umbrella. So we first have what we called collectives, and those are teams of people that are focused on different scopes along the user journey. We've got the seller experience, managing the listing form or initiatives for VIP customers. We've got buyer experience that oversee the acquisition and conversion parts of the funnel. The use case we're going to share with you tonight was led by this collective, and we've got here Tanmay representing the engineering side of the story. Then there's the discovery team that managed the search and product recommendations throughout all of our platforms. And finally, we've got ops that oversee logistics, customer support, and operations. Then on top of that, we've got teams working cross-functionally. We call them centers of excellence or enablers. Those are the platform, design, and data teams. If we further zoom into data, it's further split into 3 different departments. There's the analytics engineering, who make sure that data can be consumed and analyzed. Then there's the data science team that develop models and algorithms to make sure we can solve all business problematics. And then there's data products with Sema and myself, who work very, very close to the collectives and try to support them in deliver the best features possible. So that's us. Now I'm going to hand over to Sema that will uncover the story behind the product redesign.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So yes, the story, what's the story that we're going to tell you tonight? The story is the redesign of our product page that we commonly call at Vestiaire PDP. So if you hear PDP is still this page that we're talking about. And the product page is the page where you can find all the relevant information related to a product to make a purchase decision. This page has many entry points. You can access this page from the home page, through a notification from the checkout, through Google Shoppings and many other ways, and this makes it the second most viewed page after the home page. And on this page, as you can see, you can add a product to the bag or negotiate the price with the seller. So it's truly the key gateway to conversion. And as I was mentioning earlier, this page has been fully redesigned. It was end of last year. And this has been fully redesigned only on apps, so on Android and iOS, not on the web. And we're going to use this project as a unifying trend to explain to you how at Vestiaire we deliver a new feature. We've divided the story into 4 big chapters. So first chapter is this research and ideation, which means how did we identify the problem and how did we come up with a solution. Then we will move to feature development, so how did we build a new feature from scratch. Then Adriana will develop the A/B testing part, so how did we assess that the new feature was performing better, so the new product page was performing better than the old one. And finally, feature launch, so spoiler. What happened from the moment when we knew that the new design was better than the old one. And sorry, I'm just going back to the previous slide. So here you have the old design of the product page. And on the right, so the new design we've worked on. But first things first, research and ideation. So at this stage of the project, we are back in January 2022. Product designers already had their own idea of what could be improved on the product page, but it's always important either to validate these assumptions with data, I mean with concrete analysis, or to mirror these assumptions with the user's opinion. So that's what we did back to 2022. We've conducted various analyses as well as users' interviews. And this enabled us to identify what were the problems, what were the weak links. So the first one was that the key information on the product page is not, is missing above the fold. Above the fold is this part, so what you can see without having to scroll the page. And we can see that above the fold, we didn't have, for instance, the condition of the product, the size, and depending on the size of your screen, you couldn't see the price of the product. And these were really crucial information for the user to make a purchase decision. So yeah, this was the first problem. Second point is that our authentication service was not properly highlighted and clearly explained. So I don't know if you are all user of Vestiaire Collective, but Vestiaire Collective offer an authentication service, which means that if you purchase an item using this service, the seller will send the item to our warehouse. Then at the warehouse, our experts will authentify the item and check if it conforms to the description, if it's not a counterfeit. And when the item is approved, then it's shipped from the warehouse to the buyer. So this service is highly attractive to the users, but it was not clearly explained and clearly highlighted. There was also an issue about the product detail information being fragmented. So you have product information here, also here, and to access the full details, like the full product details, you had to click on View More. Well, you cannot really see it well here, but you have to click here, and it redirected you to another page with all the product details, so not really convenient. And lastly, we don't offer enough recirculation on the product page. So what is recirculation? Recirculation is if I'm not convinced about this product, if I don't want to buy it immediately, what can I do not to leave the app and to keep browsing? So where can I go? And on the old product page, you could either go back to the previous page or click on one of these components here. This one is self-explanatory, so basically you can go back to the previous products that you've seen, or you can click on this component, which are the recommendations of similar items. So similar items to the one you are on. But the issue is that this component about similar items is not available on all product pages. So this leaves the user with very few recirculation options. So we had identified the problem, we understood it, and we classify them into three big categories. So we understood the importance of convincing the users, of reassuring them, and keeping them. And with the new design of the product page, we aim to convince the user by magnifying the visuals and by making product details information clearer. We also aim to reassure them by highlighting the component that would increase the trust in second-hand, trust in Vestiaire, but also trust in the seller. And lastly, to keep them, as I was mentioning earlier, by offering more recirculation options. So once we have a clear vision of the of the problems and really a clear end goal. Usually, product designer makes several design proposals to the product managers and to the mobile engineers using this tool that we call Figma. And well, they all align then after discussions on the preferred version. So we understood the problem, we have the solution, we have the design. So now we can move to the feature development.
Thank you, Sema. Cool. So in this section of the presentation, I'm going to talk about how we went about implementing this beautiful design that was presented to us. Moreover, I'll also talk about what are the challenges that we faced and what are the trade-offs that we have to implement this solution. But before I get started, let's set some context. So I'll start with telling you what was the technical state of our old PDP. So the code for the old PDP was written a long time ago, around 2016 for iOS, 2018 for Android. So it was written as per the architecture that was agreed upon at that point of time, but we updated the architecture and the code was not updated. Since it was written a long time ago, a lot of the business logic was not covered in unit tests. Also, since the code was old, it was not so easy to use it with modern UI toolkits. This was especially true in terms of Android, where we want to use Jetpack Compose. And finally, we already saw in the previous slide how PDP is like at the center of engagement and conversion, which means we want to iterate over it a lot. We want to do A/B tests. We want to do a lot of improvements. And we found that the old PDP was not so easy to iterate on. So now we know the technical state of the old PDP. What were our constraints at that point of time? And this is a slide I think most of the people in this room will be very familiar with. We always want to ship the feature as soon as possible. So we want the fastest time to market. And that's the same for this design as well. We wanted our users to have the new design as soon as possible. And the team is never big enough. And it was true for us also. We had literally one Android and one iOS engineer. And this was not only our only priority. We were working on multiple priorities. And then if you want to build PDP from scratch, PDP has a very, very broad scope. Like there are things to take care of for new visitors, there are things to take care of new buyers, things to take care of when negotiations are ongoing, seller is on vacation, product is prohibited. So there is a lot of edge cases, and these different scenarios are also shared within different collectives. So these are, some of them are owned by different teams. So we have to make sure that when we do it from scratch, we don't break some of these experiences, so we have to work with those teams to make sure that we don't break those experiences. So now we know what was the state, we know what were our constraints, so what's our solution? So the first solution that we thought of was to just change the UI, just like a wrapper. Like if you have a chocolate and there's a wrapper on it and you want to change the wrapper of the chocolate, so you just remove the old wrapper, retain the same chocolate, and you put a new wrapper on it. Sounds like a very simple solution. And possibly because the scope of change is just on the UI layer, it'll be much faster time to market as well. But then we did a technical feasibility of this solution, and we found that the UI and the business logic was not well separated, which meant that we had to first refactor the code to separate the logic, and then we can do a solution like this. So again, we thought that it'll be faster time to market, but it won't actually be. And the second thing was that A/B testing part of it is really complex, because now we want the old parts of the UI and the new parts of the UI to be supported by the same business logic. And both the old and the new design do not have a 1:1 relationship. So you'll have same logic supporting some old components, some new components. So we are basically increasing the complexity of the PDP. So it becomes harder to iterate on. So this solution did not seem feasible to us at that point of time. However, now that we have updated the PDP, spoiler alert, if we had to do this design today, this might be the choice of our solution. Cool, so we couldn't go with this one. Next one was to update the PDP in sections. Again, sits well with agile software principles of delivering in small pieces, releasing in small pieces, so just continuous iterative development. So sounds like a clean solution. Again, faster time to market, at least in terms of parts of the PDP, if not the whole PDP. But the biggest drawback for this solution was that the old design and the new design did not sit well together. They both have the different fonts, different color scheme, color palette, different font sizes, so it don't sit well together. So if it's a poor user experience, that's a big drawback. And again, then the A/B test part of it becomes really complex. How do you like A/B test different parts of it? Because this design is supposed to have an impact as a whole, but we don't know if they'll have an impact in parts. So this also did not fit our requirements. So third solution is just to build a brand new PDP with the new design. And then this is technically the most cleanest. You write everything from scratch, so use the latest architecture. You can fix all the problems. You can make the code easy to iterate on. So that way it's pretty good. And you'll just leave the old PDP as it is. You don't make any changes to it, which means that the old PDP can serve as a fallback. So if we launch the new PDP and we have any issues, we can just roll back to the old one. So that's another plus. And since we have two different versions of the PDP, so now we can easily A/B test. So that's another plus for it. And then again, if you build something from scratch, the whole team builds an expertise on PDP, so that's another plus point. But the biggest drawback for this solution is that if you build from scratch, it's a much larger scope of work. We have to think about, again, all the edge cases, all the scenarios that I mentioned, we need to take care of those. And because the scope is much larger, it's much slower time to market. So this solution is also not fitting our need. So finally, what did we go with? So we went with solution 3, but we reduced the scope. So what does that mean? So we build the PDP from scratch behind the feature flag. However, we reduced the scope of the work by agreeing on an MVP based on the design that was presented to us. And how did we go about it? So for this, we defined a problem statement for the first milestone of our delivery of the PDP. And the problem statement was to change the UI design and the information hierarchy of the PDP to better equip the user to make a decision to purchase. Now that we have this problem statement, we go back to the design and we look at the parts of the design that fit this problem statement, and those are the ones that we put in the MVP, and things that don't fit in the problem statement, we just leave it out. Like say if the seller experience of the PDP, it does not help with the decision to purchase, so those are out. And this also helps in terms of the technical decisions, like there were parts in the design where we wanted to improve the like experience as well. But technically, to revamp that would again add more time to do it. But since it did not fit with this problem statement, it was left for later. And then to facilitate faster development, reducing the scope, again, we used the existing architecture that was already being used in the app. So developers are much more comfortable, much faster to develop. So again, we reduce some time to market. And then we also use the principle of continuous delivery from the previous solution, where we shipped everything that we developed in production, just that it was behind the feature flag. So it's not really a continuous release, but it's at least continuous delivery. Cool. So now that we have our solution, I'll talk a little bit more about our implementation detail. In terms of the architecture, we use MVVM with clean architecture, and we use the principles of unidirectional data flow. All these concepts are very well documented in the industry, very well documented in the community, so I will not talk too much in detail about those, but ours was a very standard implementation that is there around. And also, we took this opportunity to add good unit test coverage to all the business logic that we added. And what was cool is that for iOS, we were actually able to use SwiftUI in certain parts, like the CTAs on the PDP were built using SwiftUI. In terms of the development process, we broke down the design into user stories, and then as a team, we follow Scrum. So in every planning, we'll plan for those stories, and then we would develop them. And then every time we finish the development, these stories will go through a thorough QA process. So every small story or every part of the PDP that was developed was thoroughly QA tested. And then in terms of preparing for the release, we added Datadog monitoring for all the failures on the PDP and all the API calls they were making. So this helps us get confidence in terms of releasing. Like once we release the PDP, we see how the users are feeling or what are the errors the users are facing on the PDP. So this gives us more confidence. So this is something I'll highly recommend. And another thing that we did was to after we finished all the stories for the PDP, we actually launched it internally for our Vestiaire employees. And you'll never find a more passionate and fierce community of users for your app. And we got some really good, valuable feedbacks. We caught some obscure bugs. And once we were done with this phase, we were much more confident in releasing our app to our end users. So now I'm going to take you through the journey of how we developed the feature, and moreover, like the sort of emotional roller coaster our team went through while developing the feature. So let's start. So this is where we built the PDP from scratch. We just added the product gallery view, and everything is new, everything is from scratch. We're feeling super confident. We feel like we can conquer the world. All good. Then we start adding the product details, the brand, the price, the authentication section. Like, everything is going really smooth. We are very confident now, maybe overconfident. We are like, maybe we overestimated the problem. So great. Then from the authentication section, we start adding the description, the details into the seller part. And this is where we start finding all those hidden surprises and then hidden complexities. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is not as easy as we thought it would be. But okay, let's continue. And then we start adding the comment section and the alert section. And now we are in the deep end. We have been developing for a lot of sprints right now. We don't see the finish line till the end. And this is where we start questioning, is like, are we going to complete it? Is going to happen? We have seen some surprises as well. So we are like lost in the darkness, but nothing else to do. So we just continue developing. And then we start adding the recirculation options, and we start adding the CTAs. And this is where we start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And then now we are like, okay, I think we can do this. So this is the moment we are like, okay, let's push. And then finally we do the last few stories. We finish the recirculation, we add all the CTAs, and we are done. And this is again, now we're feeling great. We're feeling a sense of accomplishment. And if you actually see the difference between the last two screenshots, there's not much, because at this point of time, the team was doing a very important step, which was implementing the tracking. And now I'll invite Sema to tell us all about the tracking implementation.
Yeah, what a smooth transition. Okay, can I? Yes. So as Taime mentioned, the last step, but not least, of feature development is the tracking implementation. For those not familiar with tracking is what enables us to understand the user activity on the platform. So basically to answer the question, what are the users doing on our website or on our app? And yeah, to answer this kind of questions, which pages do the users see, in which order, what are the components they are interacting with? So for instance, if a user click on the call to action, so in this case, the add to bag call to action, and if this action is tracked, it will trigger what we call an event. And then all of our events are stored in our data warehouse. So ours is Snowflake. And it enables the analyst to retrace the user journey and to get insights from it. And in our case, since it was like a redesign, it was really a mandatory step in the feature development, because of course we wanted to understand how this new design was changing the way users were interacting with the different components of the product page. So here is an overview of all the events that we added on this new product page. So in pink or orange, depending on how you see it, it's all the events that were replicated from the old to the new product page. And in yellow, the events that were added to help us deep diving, but yeah, these were events that we didn't have before. So we can maybe just focus on the yellow one, just for you to understand the rationale. So we added a click on the share CTA because before it was here, just below the like CTA. And we just wanted to understand if by moving it up, we were losing interactions with it. Also, we added a scroll event on the details section that is sent once the user is exposed to the details, to the expanded details section. Because as mentioned earlier, one of the problems was that the product information was fragmented. So of course we wanted to understand if by making it clearer and more easily accessible, we were increasing visibility of this details section. There was also another scroll event that was sent once the user see the seller section, just to have an idea of how deeper the user was scrolling, and another one on the click on the arrows when the user expand or collapse the section, because this gray accordion was a brand new component, so it was just for us to understand out of curiosity what were the interactions with it. So how did we implement the tracking? I mean, how? We're not going to go much into the technical details, but we used Snowplow as a tracking tool. It's a recent and brand new tool that we're using. We've been using Google Analytics for years, but we've moved to Snowplow for various reasons. But among them, the fact that we can have more control over our data, because we don't need to share it anymore with third parties, so with Google. And for this reason, also, it's way more GDPR compliant than GA. Also, one of the main reasons of this change is the fact that we can receive data real time. When with GA, we had to wait sometimes for 24 hours to get the data. So having it real time in our warehouse is really a game changer in terms of intraday monitoring. And lastly, with Snowplow, it's also way easier to pass contextual information. Because I don't know if some of you are familiar with GA, but it can be tedious to pass a lot of context with our events. When with Snowplow, we have the concept of entities, which are a set of variables, and which help us passing the context in a more organized way, let's say. There are various stakeholders involved in the tracking implementation process. So the product manager, the product analyst, in our case for this project, the product designer, but depending on the project, it can also be a business counterpart, or I don't know. And of course, mobile engineers, because they are the one working on the implementation. So the first step before adding any event is the measurement strategy. We have to know what we want to measure, what we want to monitor, what are the KPIs. So at this step, the product manager, product analyst, and product designer were involved. So once we are clear on the strategy, the product analyst then works on the tracking design and create Jira tickets for the mobile engineers. Then we usually have a refinement meeting. So the goal of this refinement meeting is to review all the tickets created, to review the feasibility also of the implementation, because sometimes the analysis is a bit ambitious. And also to review the priorities, because as mentioned earlier, the tracking implementation is the last step of the feature development, so sometimes we short in time. So we have also to define what are the events that are nice to have, but I mean, without whom we could live. And so after the implementation, we have the QA part, which consists in checking if the implementation is correct. So it consists in checking the namings, if the event is triggered properly, and if the right context, so the right entities, are attached to our events. So what's the process for the QA? So usually the mobile engineer, so in this case it was Terry, indicates me what is the test build that I can download from the portal to generate my events. So I download it, and then I use two tools simultaneously, BrowserStack and Kibana. So this is BrowserStack UI. In BrowserStack, you can upload test builds, and from it, generate the events that were required. And then in Kibana, because it's real time, you can check what are the events that have been triggered and if the implementation is correct. So once we have the implementation, we are ready for A/B testing. But first, some key takeaways from the feature development part.
Cool. So what were the takeaways from the feature development? So first one I would say is to have a very clear, well-defined problem statement. Like if you say, I want to revamp, or like the goal is to revamp the PDP, it's too broad. Everything can fall into that scope. But if you say, I want to change the information hierarchy of the PDP to better equip the user to make a decision to purchase, you can already know what should be part of this scope and what should not be. So definitely helps a lot in terms of agreeing on MVP, making technical decisions. The second would be to have multiple quality checkpoints, especially when you have a project with so many, such a large scope, which can have so many edge cases, so many different scenarios. So in this case, for us, we had the unit tests, we had QA validation, and then we did an internal beta release. So it's not important to follow exactly these, but to have multiple checkpoints so that you can catch everything before it goes into production and you don't have surprises. And talking about surprises, there will be surprises. It's impossible to see everything in advance before you start building it. So the only thing that you can do is just be prepared for it, keep some buffer in terms of time, or you can just expect surprise, and that way you will never be surprised. So, and finally, don't forget about the tracking, especially if you want to measure how the new design has an impact on the user's behavior. It's very important that we do the tracking and we do it right. Cool. And with this, I'll hand over to Adriana to talk about the A/B testing.
Thank you. So now we have the feature, we have the tracking in place. How do we know if the feature is successful? So let's refresh a bit our knowledge about this thing we call A/B testing. A/B testing basically consists in comparing two variations or more, and then determining which one has performed better, right? We usually have a control group and then one or more treatments that we test against that control. So for A/B testing to work, two things need to happen. First of all experiments need to rely on a randomized allocation of an experimentation unit. That sounds a bit complex, but it basically means that you need some sort of identifier to allocate traffic into the different variations. And the second thing that needs to happen is that the samples have to be evenly distributed. You cannot have, for instance, 95% of French users in the control and 1% of French users in the treatment, because they need to be comparable, right? So why did we go for A/B testing and not, for instance, just some progressive rollout and monitoring or pre-post testing? This feature, to begin with, was a huge change. It was not only a restyling of the page, it was like a change in architecture and information hierarchy. So we did believe that we could impact many, many KPIs, both like business and product metrics. Then we were pretty confident that, like since Sema told you, the product page is the second view page, so traffic is not an issue. And some of you that know A/B testing, you know that we really thrive for volumes there. So in this case, since we were confident that we were able to achieve nice volumes, we knew that we would observe significant insights when analyzing the results. Also, never start an A/B test without an hypothesis. We did know what to expect from the feature. We had like a very specific goal that could be measured with like available data. And that was one of the reasons that we decided to go for this solution. And finally, we had like lots of resources. Many people were involved, and we could carry out the A/B test pretty smoothly. So that's how A/B testing looks like at Vestiaire. This is the pipeline from the user perspective. And you can see here like many tools, the major ones actually, like we have some left out, involved. But basically what happens is as follows. Users access our platforms, both in apps or in desktop, and they start doing stuff, right? They can see different screens, they can click different buttons. This generates tracking data. They can also, for instance, place an order that would generate backend data. And if it's the case that they access a feature or a screen that is currently part of an A/B test, that's when we call Launch Darkly, our feature flag platform that tells us basically in what feature flag the user is, in what experiment the user is part of, what he was in the variations, and some contextual data along with that. So this whole package of data is then sent to Snowflake, where we transform this data into nice data models that we can analyze and that are ready to be consumed. And the last part of the pipeline is Growthbook, our experiment analysis tool that basically reads real-time Snowflake. It uses raw experimental data combined with other sorts of data to produce some results, run some statistical engine, and based on that, we can then come up with conclusions for our A/B tests. So this is another way to look at it, the process from our perspective. There's 4 main stages. The first one, the planning one, is probably the most crucial step along the A/B testing way. In this phase, we need to plan all the details prior to the test launch, being the hypotheses, choose the KPIs, talk about the background, the technical details, and we do this in a template that you will see in the next slide. When this is all finished and all the stakeholders we are aligned, then we can move to the execution part, where we build this feature flag, we create the experiment, we test, we triple test, and we make sure that data is flowing. And then comes the most difficult thing in the whole process, which is to wait that the KPIs get populated and we can start interpreting the results. So in this third step, it's about squeezing the data, brainstorming, exchanging opinions, and try to have an idea of what's what before coming up with a conclusion and then communicating that to the rest of stakeholders. And we've added a recent additional quick check at the end, which is the evaluation quality score. It's basically an excuse to gather together and reflect on what we did so that we have ideas on what to improve for the next iterations. So that was the theory part. Now let's deep dive into our use case. The first thing we did was to define our hypothesis. For this particular case, we decided to go with the new PDP will increase the user's intention to buy, right? And then once this is defined, we can try to then fill in all the technical details, such as the scope, like the audience for the A/B test. Are we going to run this test in mobile, using front-end for log users, non-log users, and all of these details. Now, the hypothesis is very nice, but it has to be able to produce some numbers, right? Like, we should be able to measure it. So that's why in A/B testing, we have KPIs, which are the real thing. There are mainly 2 types of metrics, the success metrics that are the ones that will guide our decisions. So these are the ones that tell us if the hypothesis is valid or not. So in this case, the intention to buy was translated to the number of products the users added to cart. And we would compare this metric for the control and the treatment to see which one performs better. And then, of course, there's some guardrails because we want to make sure to keep an eye for some other metrics. And here we added, for instance, clicks on different CTAs in the page, like alerts created, make me an offer, and the classic sold items not to damage conversion. The final thing on the planning stage is to discuss and try to foresee the potential scenarios and what we would do in every case. So in this case, we said that if the success KPI was positive and the guardrails were at least neutral, we would roll out the feature. If at least we found out one negative guardrail, we would discuss the trade-offs, deep dive, and keep iterating. And if everything was negative, of course, we wouldn't roll out. So now that this is all done and nicely put in our template, we can start creating the feature flag, and this is how the UI looks like. So you can see here that the feature flag is literally a switch that you can turn on and off to serve different variations to different groups of users. And basically, once the engineers have created the different variations, as in control, as the old PDP, and the redesigned PDP, you can then add some rules to limit the scope of your A/B test. In our case, we wanted to just test on iOS users up to that particular version. So those were the users included in the A/B test. Then the next thing was to decide, how are we going to open this new feature? Are we going to go directly 50-50? No, never. The first thing is to open just to a very small group of users so that we can debug and check if performance is working as expected. So we went for a couple of days for like a minor group of users, and then we increased this rollout. So as you can see here, the experimental unit that we chose was the user key, the user ID, and this is what LaunchDarkly used to allocate users into the control and the variation. The second thing that was quite important is to activate the data export so that data is flowing and we can then be within the tables in our data warehouses and start analyzing that data. So the next step on the way is to start creating the experiment in Growthbook. Growthbook is our experiment analytics tool, as we said, and what we basically do is we start up a new experiment. We have to tell Growthbook, take this feature flag from LaunchDarkly, get these variations, and then pulls all the users, and you can add metrics on top of that to analyze how the variations are performing. We usually have most of the metrics already created, but like for some A/B tests, we need to create specific KPIs. And after some difficult waiting, here are the results. This is the dashboard that is presented by Growthbook, and as you can see, we can see the old design, the new design, and then the users and the success metrics and all the guardrails. So the first thing to look at is the volume. We need to make sure that we can observe enough volume to find like a solid conclusion. It was the case. Then we look at the chance to be the control, which tells us basically the probability that the new design is better than the old one. In this case, we got extra lucky. I must confess, it's not usually this good. But there was a 100% probability that the redesigned version was better than the control, and that was awesome. And once we know which one is better, we can look at how much better or how much worse if it was the case, right? So this is told by the percent chance. The way it reads is products added to cart were improved by 9.5% in the new design versus the old design, right? So far so good. Success metric seems to be super positively impacted, but there's some red on the screen, and we said that if at least one of the guardrails was negatively impacted, we would deep dive. So what happened here? This is a KPI that is following the clicks on alerts creation on the product page. And by the results, we know that it can get worse, right? Basically, there's a 100% chance that the users in the new variations are clicking less in the alerts link, right? So the first obvious thing to check is, did we change this part? And yes, indeed, we placed that section much, much lower in the PDP, so less users might be viewing this feature. And the second thing was that we had two definitions for alert creation. One that was like the click on the literal link, and then this would open a pop-up, and users could save the alert. So we checked the other KPI, and thank God it was stable, so we decided to roll out the new feature. So basically here you can see the key results, super positive impacts on the success metrics and most of the guardrails. You can see that the save alerts are like pretty stable, although the basic clicks are worse in this case. We managed to validate our hypothesis. The new PDP indeed improved the user's intention to buy, so that's why we came up with a conclusion to roll out the new feature. And because we don't want you to leave empty-handed, some takeaways on A/B testing too. On the planning stage, this is really the cherry on top of the cake. Without a good planning, there's no A/B test. And if you manage to master this part, rest assured that the rest of the process will run smoothly. On the execution side, based on our experience, collaboration is key. Like the times that we were aligned and we moved together, it was really when we managed to succeed. On interpretation, it's super, super tempting to squeeze the data and to try to answer all of the questions, even if that means that we're generating more questions. So here what we would advise is just analyze that knowledge and move fast. It's better to continuously A/B test than to get stuck in a single A/B test with like a million deep dives. And finally, on the communication side, it doesn't matter the result. Like honestly, in A/B testing, the result is the less important thing. What matters is that you get some valuable insights that you can keep iterating on and making your features much, much better. Thank you. So heading over to Tanmay for final thoughts on feature launch.
Well, this is the easiest part of it. So now, yes, I missed the clicker. Yeah. So to roll out the feature, it's pretty simple. We saw the Launch Darkly dashboard there. We just go from 50/50 to 100%, and all our users who had updated the app since we launched the A/B test get the new PDP. And we continue to monitor the feature through Firebase and Datadog. And what's cool is that we have this dashboard for PDP views on Datadog. And this is a screenshot of the week where we went 100%. So you can here see this is the A/B test that was going on. So the old and the new PDP were like 50%, 50%. And this is the point at which we said goodbye to the old PDP and we moved to the new PDP. And some cool features about, some thoughts about the feature launch. During the A/B test and also after the launch of the feature, we have had 0 major crashes on both the platforms, Android and iOS, which tells us about all the quality checks that we put in place, helped us to get here. So that was great. Also, we talked a lot about ease of iteration. So as soon as we finished with the feature launch, within 2 weeks, we are ready to do, we finished the development for 2 new A/B tests. So we were able to make our PDP much easier to iterate on. And what's cool is that on Android, actually we went back and deleted the old PDP. And here's the fun fact. So the old PDP is about like 12,000 lines of code. And this is what we deleted. And then the new PDP, we had added like 11,000 lines of code. So if I had to put it very crudely, by deleting 1,000 lines of code from our code base, we went from the old PDP to the new PDP. Yeah. And like I mentioned, that this was just the first milestone, so there's a lot more to come. If somebody can click on this, this is like the final vision for our PDP. So we want to test displaying the key CTAs on landing. Also optimize the recommendations. Test displaying the navigation bar, also test our authentication placement. So a lot of iterations and a lot of A/B tests planned. So if you are a Vestiaire Collective users, you are going to see a lot of exciting features and you're going to be part of a lot of A/B tests. So watch out. And that's it from us. Thank you for listening to us. And now we are open to your questions.
Thank you. Great presentation. Super interesting. Thank you, guys. My name is Mike. I work for Aircall as a product data analyst as well. Super interested in the way that you are handling the A/B testing there. What's the amount of time that you usually take for an A/B testing? Do you change it? What are the parameters that you look into?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you. So before this pipeline that we built like 2 years ago, we used to analyze our A/B tests using frequency statistics, and with this approach, you need to predefine, like, you need like a minimum sample size, and you have to compute the time that you need to run the test. The coolest thing about Growthbook is that it uses Bayesian statistics, so it kind of learns on the way. And basically, it depends on where the test is launched, but if it's beginning of the funnel, like in the homepage, in a couple of days, more or less, we have like some decent results. If it's in the checkout, on the other hand, of course, like we need to wait a bit more. But I wouldn't say, like in general, not more than 2 weeks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you again for the presentation. I just had a question about the recommendation algorithm for the redirecting of customers to new products. I was wondering what that looked like. Do you recommend based on the product itself, or do you recommend more on like a collaborative filtering where you use other users who are similar and use their searches to recommend items?
Well, to be honest, it's more on the data science part. I don't have the details of the the algorithm on the recommendation. Maybe Sephora, you had some idea because you.
Yeah, so another fun fact, I was in the data science team before joining the communications team. So basically, yeah, on this side, we are more, I've been experiencing user-based and product-based algorithms, but right now we are mainly focusing on product-based algorithms. The questions, yeah, I see.
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation, very interesting. Could you please describe how long each step took from A to Z? Thanks.
You start, Samuel.
So research and ideation part, well, it was done by the product managers, but from what I know, it was like 1 month of interviews in January 2022.
And for the development part, it took around 12 sprints. 12 sprints, am I right? Yeah, 12, so around 6 months, basically. So it was just one Android and one iOS engineer. And like I said, we were working on multiple priorities, so it took us 6 months to build this.
Yeah, for the A/B testing part, I think it was around 1 week and a half, including like the testing and the initial phases of the 5% rollout. But then the thing is that we do like several things simultaneously, so we might be working in like 5 A/B tests at the same time, so you get a bit lost about time when you're in there.
Just one more question. I saw on the last slide it was like, oh, we're not finished yet. So I didn't get a chance to read everything on there, but I was just wondering, yeah, like how often do you reevaluate your KPIs, and if your current or your new PDP is performing well, if there is a need to change something else? Yeah, what does that process look like for you guys?
I can say something about it. From the A/B testing perspective, since it's like, as I mentioned, something continuous, we kind of never stop. So like one iteration leads to the next one, and then like we keep changing things. For KPIs, since the time I'm here in the company, we migrated from GA to Snowplow, so that was like a big time for reviewing all the logic, like all the metrics that we had. So further than that,
yeah. But the next steps don't really depend on this KPIs monitoring, but more on the collective priorities at the moment. So what we want to focus on buyer experience on this quarter. So then we try to evaluate. How can I say? Like the cost in terms of engineering, like the effort that it would need to work on step 2, for instance, and also try to estimate the gain, our KPI. If we look at our KPIs, like by how much we think that we could increase the add to carts by working on step 2. And then we balance both. So what's the efforts needed and what can we gain? And yeah, that's also how we can define priorities.
Okay, and so given that, what do you feel like is the current priority for the next improvements or the A/B testing?
On the product page side, well, there is this improvement that is ongoing about the sticky CTAs on landing. But then we are not sure about the next one because there are a lot of other projects. So But I would say the recommendations. Yeah, we are also working a lot of it, especially data science team, to improve the algorithm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation and great template. It's very neat. One question about the A/B testing part. So, do you use some business KPIs to monetize the project instead of just measuring the user interaction with the new feature? Because in the end, we'd like to measure the ROI of the development. So, whether you try to convert the increasement in user interaction into some annualized in euro.
Yeah, so there are like two main answers here. So first of all, we try to start all of our strategic thinking from the North Star of the company. So that's essentially the business KPI. So like, let's say sometimes we focus on retention, some others on like engagement. And then like from this high level metric, we then like develop the product strategy. So it's like we try to identify all the product metrics that can increase or like improve that one. And then from here, it's like when all the initiatives like A/B testing or like feature launches or like any other analysis like are built. Inside A/B testing, if it's like from the product side, we use like product metrics, but it's true that sometimes we check GMV, for instance, or like some other more like business related KPIs. But we also, for instance, test data science experiments. And in this case, instead of users, we use products, and the metrics are like entirely different. So the important thing in A/B testing is that the KPIs explain your hypothesis, and sometimes they seem super far from like the business goal or like the company goals, but in fact they're like just layers below that. But everything like on the battlefield aims to improve the business KPIs.
Okay, just one remark about this is if we only focus on the KPIs related to the feature, there may be some hidden cannibalization effect that we don't measure through this experiment. For example, if you improve a lot of user impact experiments through the app, maybe from some users who use both web and app, they just tend to use more app, but you seem like you make huge impact in the user, but overall, if you measure the benefits of the development, overall it just comes to zero. Sometimes it could happen, and sometimes if you just don't measure the business impact, you may seem user that interact a lot with the feature, but sometimes they just tend to buy less expensive product, and overall maybe harm the revenue of the company. So I think, and I don't know how the project is validated through the committee, etc. But in the end, there may be some need to measure the ROI of the development. So in the end, there need to be to calculate actually in euro how much is the benefit for the company.
You're totally right, and there's like indeed a strong collaboration between like the product team and the business analyst. So we do check the impact of like the whole picture of A/B test on the business dashboards, for instance, to make sure that we suddenly see like KPIs dropping down and we don't know why. It's very difficult to estimate the impact of a single A/B test in like a very high level KPI, because there are like many initiatives that are running at the same time. There's like seasonality, there's like campaigns, the CRM team, so it's like a very big package of things that can impact the metrics. So isolate one A/B test alone, it's very difficult. But we do acknowledge the fact, and we do follow the calendar, like to see if there's like overlaps of like an A/B test with a campaign, for instance, or like 3 A/B tests in different departments that have like contradictory conclusions, for instance. All of these we do check.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we do A/B tests to erase the effect of seasonality, etc. That's the goal of A/B testing, to measure two populations at the same time. Okay, and another question about the fact that you A/B test the whole new design from old to new in the whole. Why not just progressively roll out some new component one by one? Because maybe in the whole that you make huge impact, positive impact. Maybe without some component, it could be better. We don't know actually, and why such a choice? Why you decide to shift all in once and to make only one? Yeah.
2 reasons. First of all, because like based on our experience, testing just like small design iterations doesn't really like shift our product metrics. So we did that in the past, like we changed title colors, and we believe that for this kind of approach, usability testing or internal beta testing might be like more productive. And second of all, because the effort of like testing one feature after the other would suppose like a very long test runtime. So we decided to group the main changes and go for this bet, because we did try the other alternatives in the past and we saw that it wasn't really fitting our needs at that time.
Okay, so actually, so component is it's not very insignificant in terms of impact, so hard to measure, and shift as a whole. It's more
statistically
visible.
Speaking, there's also like less volume. It's like harder to like observe statistical significance. So it was like nearly impossible to just like test the change of a color or a title.
Thank you.
I will ask my question. Been waiting. Yeah, thanks a lot. It was like full of actionable insights, and I love that you went into details, also in the tools, and yeah, I hope everyone liked it as well. So you went into the details of the technical challenges, and I would like to ask you to pick one organizational challenge, sorry, and explain us how you overcame it, because I feel like there was a lot of stakeholders involved in the projects, and that's sometimes one of the key parts if you want to perform in this field.
Mostly in terms of the technical implementation for like...
Basically, how did you guys work together, like music paper, maybe sometimes not, and how did you kind of solution those challenges?
So, like I talked about it, like PDP touches a lot of different parts, and it's different parts of the PDP are owned by different teams. So the first thing that we did was, like, when we started this project, technically we were like the owners of it. So that means that we are going to take care of it. And then after that, it was like on the, say, based on scenarios, based on with each team we had a different setup. But the idea was to find out all these, like when we start the implementation and we find that, okay, this is something that that is that is maintained by another collective. So we go, I think maybe sometimes at the developer level, sometimes at the product level, we just forward them that this is what we are doing, this is a change. If you have any red flags, that's there. And then I think at the developers level, it was more like interacting one-on-one to understand that, okay, the thing to maintain was that when we move, like when we develop the feature, if we don't improve it, or we don't try to improve it, at least we match exactly the same behavior that is on the old PDP, right? Because it's an A/B test. So if we cannot say we are not improving the experience, it's actually the same as the previous one, so that it does not have any effect on A/B test. So like this, and it was again, it was on case-by-case basis, and we worked with different teams to make it work.
Last one.
Yeah, talking about the organization, just one question for you actually.
Yes.
As an engineering manager, how do you interact with the product manager on a daily basis? Do you participate in all the agile ceremonies every day?
Yes. So actually for this project, I was the developer first. I was the Android engineer on this project, and then I moved towards the engineering manager part. But coming from that perspective, I like to be close to the development part of it. So I'm part of the DSMs. I'm also part, and I think one key thing that I identified is that for an engineering manager, it's important to be part of the refinements and the pre-refinements, to flag things early, to understand early, to define tickets well, so that when it comes to the developers, they have much clearer understanding of what needs to be done, and I can give my technical inputs early. So yeah, so right now I'm part of all the ceremonies, maybe not the retrospective, because it's better if they can bitch about the manager.
Okay, so do you participate? How many feature teams as a one engineer manager? Maybe you are engaged in multiple feature teams.
So I think in our company, the setup is slightly different. So we have one squad. So I'm manager of one squad. So yeah, it's one squad, but with a broad scope. So we do multiple features with the squad, but it's just one squad.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Amazing. Thanks everyone for your questions, and we hope that you enjoyed the talk. So, yeah, I mean, we would love to stay in touch with you after the event. So as you got the time to see, don't hesitate if you want to know more about what we do in the tech teams to follow us on LinkedIn or Welcome to the Jungle. This is where we have our open positions and we publish about our upcoming tech events. And also, yeah, don't hesitate to subscribe to the Vestiaire Connected Tech blog as well. And speaking of open positions, we have many open positions right now. So yeah, senior software engineer, QA engineer. Feel free to come and talk to us if you're interested, or directly like apply on the website. And there are QR codes also. So yeah, so last points about the logistics, super important. Here we can have our snacks and food. It will be here. To go out of the building, super important, listen to me, because otherwise you will stay blocked. Do not go back over there. You need to go out from the entrance, at the back door exit. I put some, over there. I put some notes and just go downstairs, don't use the elevator. So that's it on that side. Thanks a lot. It was really cool to have you.
And thanks to everyone at Vestiaire for receiving us. And of course, don't leave now. Have a drink, meet with each other and everything. And also, very keen on having your feedback about today's talk. Do you like Rex like that, where we managed to kind of have talks that basically merge data, product, design, and engineering? Really keen on having your feedbacks. Talk to you about everything. And we are announcing the next event. This is a series of events on this theme, so in order to make it better next time, give us feedback and we'd love to hear about you. Thanks, guys, and thanks to Vestiaire.